Hello class, today I'm going to tell you about some of the cultural differences between American and Chinese culture that I witnessed during my year as a transfer student in China. As you can see from my features, I am already Chinese. My parents were both first-generation immigrants from China. Therefore, I thought I'd have the most basic knowledge of Chinese culture, so my transition would be so smooth. And boy, was I wrong. Not only was the Chinese I spoke at home completely different than the Chinese that's taught in the schools there, which is formal Mandarin, I needed an entire summer's worth of cultural immersion and tutoring to prepare me for the school year. It should have dawned on me then how intense the Chinese education system was, because I wasn't the only one who needed tutoring. There was always someone there before I got there, and there was always someone there to take my place when I left my tutor. And these were kids who grew up their entire lives in China, and they were still getting a tutor during the summer. And what I thought that my tutor was the only one who used recitation to teach, because he would have me recite these poems, passages, whatever he could get his hands on. And I thought it was this quick fix technique of his to get as much Mandarin into my head before the school year. However, when I started class, this was the only method that teachers use. The only method. Even in classes like art, we would have things to recite, like the techniques that we were supposed to use. Think of Hermione Granger in Harry Potter. Like, the way she would memorize her textbooks and recite them back to the teachers as her answers, that was the recommendation in China. Everyone had to give these exact, precise wording answers in class. Uniformity is a trend. You'll find this theme goes throughout my speech. The major cultural difference was so difficult for me because I was a teenage girl at the time. This uniform is an XL. Like, that is ridiculous. I was constantly reminded of my obesity according to their standards, and they disliked people who stood out, hence the uniform. And the uniform doesn't stop just here. It was my hair, my nails had to be perfect, and my shoes. I can't get my feet up that high, but yeah, your shoes had to be sneakers. They couldn't be platform shoes or anything where your toes were showing. It was really strict. Like, we would have teachers come around every so often and measure the hair on boys' heads to make sure they were only an inch long. And what? That's China for you. And but the one thing good about these uniforms is a simple glance at me, you could tell exactly which school I went to and what grade I was in, because they would have this public announcement, and purple stood for 8th graders, and my school insignia was right here, insignia, I believe that word is. And yeah, so I guess for safety reasons it was nice, and it was super easy to get ready in the morning. Anywho, on to class. I made this as a visual representation. I have to get far enough so you can all see it. I hope it's not backwards. Well, anyway, this is a normal school day. As you can see, we have flag raising ceremonies at 7:30 in the morning every day, where we sang the national anthem, the school anthem, and we do morning exercises or stretches. This morning ritual was really important because it reinforced the whole communism part of a community, just ideology. And it was really taboo to interrupt these activities if you were late. And so it was actually a pretty good system to keep students from coming to school late. But if you didn't show up for the day, everybody knew, because we had to stand according to our grade, our class, our gender, and height. So everyone had this specific spot that they would memorize in our courtyard. And if you weren't here, that spot would remain empty, and it looked so bad for your class. So, but it was nice to have a morning exercise to begin your day. Your heart would be pumping, and you'd be super excited for the day to come. And next is the briefing with your homeroom teacher. And again, this reinforced this community, and actually they try to promote equality as much as they can too. We would go over our schedule for the day. As you can see over here, I put all the different subjects that we could have for our morning classes and our afternoon classes. And so she would go over our schedule with us, and if any of these different classes, if we had misbehaved or anything, she would address them first thing in the morning with us and lay out our detentions for the day, which would take place right around here. So as you can see, it's not very fun. Instead of recess, an hour of recess, you might have detention. And we had other things, like our school didn't employ any janitors, so we had to be our own janitors. So she would go over the schedule, who was to clean for the day and who were for the week and things like that. And we were all very close because students and their homeroom teachers actually stay together. We don't get shuffled around every year. We stay together for all 3 years of middle school. And the school would frequently host these school-wide events where our classes would get together and put together a skit or a play or something to display our unique talents. So this was one of the few times where kids could be individuals and try to shine. And my class was known for having a professional dancer and an opera singer. So we would put on a lot of plays. The homeroom teacher was the only person in the whole school who would promote individual talent, but only because she wants to show off these students so our class can be honored with prizes and stuff. The class schedules in China are very similar to our high school schedules, but with a few differences. All students are required to learn 2 languages, English and Chinese. They start English classes in either 2nd or 3rd grade, and we have 2-hour lunch breaks, which is really nice if you like to take a while for your lunch or whatever. But it was all about the outcome. Everything they did here was for our benefit. And as you can see, 7:30 to 5 p.m. Sometimes it would be 5:30 if you were the one who had to stay after and sweep the classroom. So they try to do as much as they can so that we can excel. And there was a test for everything, and nothing was easy. Even for me, being fluent native American, I was rarely able to achieve 100% on my tests. And after each major test, like a midterm or a final, they would make out these lists of everyone in the school, what grade they got, and rank us. And everyone would know who got ranked first and who got ranked last, and it was the worst feeling in the world because I would always be in the bottom tier, and it was just awful. But that's what they have to do, because only the best students get to go to the best schools. But it doesn't always work that way because the best schools require lots of fees. So this is where the system starts separating the wealthy upper class from the poor lower class. Everything revolves around grades, but a little bribery can go a long way in China. Grade school is where it all starts. If you pay your way into a prestigious grade school, you have a higher chance because they'll prepare you for whatever test you have to take to go to a great middle school. And then from there, it takes a combination of good grades and money to get into a prestigious high school. Like the lower the grades are, the more you're going to have to pay to get into that high school, etc., etc. And the poor suffer the most from the system because they struggle the hardest trying to make payments for their kids to go to school, and their children face the most stress because they're the ones who have to work harder to get better grades. And this hierarchy amongst the parents influenced the kids a lot. You always knew who the richest students were, and they would have this high social class clique, and they would be the ones who didn't have to care about school as much. And the lower social class, often if the ones who just refuse to be part of the system, bless their hearts, well, they would be the ones who usually ended up in gangs at the bottom of the chain. So it wasn't good. And I had several kids in my class whose hair had turned white from the daily stress that they had to endure. But while it's easy to point out all of China's educational system flaws, I did gain an immense amount of useful experience. For example, my memorization skills have been honed to perfection. A high stress environment and the amount of schoolwork that I had to prepare every day prepared me wonderfully for high school and college. And I appreciate our American system and society and our process-oriented educational system more than I ever did before. Uniformity, communist ideologies, strict rules, and old-fashioned social systems are just not meant for me. I also had a personal revelation during all of this. All my life, I've been given this false sense of achievement from our American schools. I always got good grades in school. I was a model student. I did all these extracurriculars. Well, in China, I was the exact opposite. I was right down here with the gangs and the rebels. My weight made my American background a lot less exotic and a lot more stereotypical. Yeah, I was that fat, lazy American chick who probably bought her way into our school. So I'm sorry that I represented us so badly, and my individualism made me a threat. Teachers, especially in classes like history and geography, they hated calling on me in case I said something really taboo, like Taiwan is not part of China or something. It was terrible. And however, once I came to accept that I'm different and I'm meant to be different, I was able to focus my attention on things that my American culture has taught me were important. I use my social skills, I like to brag, not to brag, but I use my social skills to focus on friendships instead of grades. And each student has an interesting story of their own, how they had to bribe their way into school or what their parents do to be able to send them to school. And it was all really interesting, and their insight taught me more about China and its culture and how its class system works than any of my classes ever could. And I stuck to what I knew best in that environment, which was English, and focused on helping my English teacher during English class to improve everyone's accents, gaining more valuable teaching experience. I guess what I'm trying to say is the cultural differences between China and America are like the North Pole and the South Pole. It's the most extreme of any comparison in the world. However, if you keep your head on and focus on what's important, cultural barriers are nothing compared to an open-minded American.